Welcome back to the Resident Evil The Complete Story. You're joining us at part 2, and if you want to see the beginnings of this evil organization, then head on back some episodes. We've got the Prologue, where we tell you everything from before the first games, and then episode 1, that covers Resident Evil 0. Alright, during this disclaimer, you're going to go ahead and enjoy the responses of who your favorite character is. The question for this episode is simple. What did you find to be the scariest monster? For me, nothing is worse than the original game's dog jump scene. It was so unexpected. No other game had ever done anything like that to me. Now it seems like every other game does that to me, but that's a rant for another day. So it's time to disclaim. While I would love to spend hours upon hours going over every little plot, side plot, subplots of the Resident Evil games, we just don't have that kind of time in our main 5-part story series. What this means is that we're going to go over just enough to give you the plot and information so that you understand what's going on if you were to pick up any game in the series. If we miss a key plot point in the overall story, that was probably a mistake. If we omit something that was a little more obscure than you would like, it's probably because we were trying to keep our story flowing and understandable to the generic person who comes across the video. Also, we're going to be going over the key characters, not the 90th extra partner that pops up randomly. The reason for that is simple. Some characters were just brought up because they needed to make things politically correct. Lastly, there are 4 games covered in this episode. The timelines don't match up perfectly, with one game stating that the Outbreak started earlier than the other games. The time difference is about 4 days, but before you guys go crazy in the comments, the games are released out of order, making the timeline just a little bit wonky with all those retcons. Supposedly, Resident Evil Outbreak begins before Resident Evil 3, and Resident Evil 2 takes place during both of these games. But Resident Evil 3 claims that the Outbreak started on the 28th of September. But in Resident Evil Outbreak, it states that the Outbreak actually started on the 24th. So I've put things together as best as I can. But it still might be a little bit off. But don't worry, you get all the juicy bits for the story. So in short, the purpose of this series is to allow you to understand the overall plots of the game and be able to discuss it, but maybe not have the exact dates on everything. Alright, you got all that? Good. Time to get into character. Evil voice, begin. We're going to tone it down drastically though, as many of you complained about it before. We're trying to make each story series stand out better by mixing up the voices ever so slightly, but we agree we went too far in the last episode. When we last left off, we were beginning to get to the very first Resident Evil. Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, and Albert Wesker all fled into the nearby mansion. Albert Wesker was actually a triple agent working at this time to gather data to prove his loyalty to the Third Organization. For the sake of the plot here, we'll be going over the Resident Evil Remake plot. Capcom has released this on a few systems, but they've adjusted the plot to allow the game to function in the overall story that they've created and crafted over the years. STARS Team Alpha enters the mansion, and immediately Wesker runs off from everyone into a secret room within the mansion to collect his data. Chris and Jill begin to explore the mansion, discovering members of Bravo Team as they go. But most are being killed or have been killed long before Chris and Jill even got there. The deeper they go though, they find notes and journals explaining that this mansion was used to house experiments for the Umbrella Corporation, and quickly discover that the entire mansion is littered with traps around every corner. While this is going on, William Birkin is passing beneath the sewers of the mansion in Raccoon City, heading towards a meeting that has been preset with the Chicago branch of the Umbrella Organization. It is here that the fact that the combat data is available to be collected is announced to everyone. As Chris and Jill find Wesker deep within the facility, he injects himself with a prototype version of the virus to try and escape them. Wesker then releases the tyrant and allows it to kill him. With that, Chris, Jill, and the player are all left to assume Albert Wesker has officially been killed. The tyrant then goes on to battle the rest of the members of STARS, and the combat data is collected. As their battle begins though, things get a little bit worse for the members of STARS as a self-destruct mechanism in the facility has been activated. They fight until the death of the tyrant, with Chris and Jill finishing it off and then heading for the helicopter launch pad. Sergey, the head of the Umbrella's Special Operations branch, has been moving silently around the facility and mansion since the start of the mansion outbreak, and he activates the Red Queen Protocol. This steals Wesker's access rights to all the computer and information available to them, and backs up all of the facility's data, including that much-desired combat data. With his mission for Spencer, the current head of Umbrella, completed, Sergei leaves the facility before it can explode around him. Near dawn, and with very little time left until the mansion's destruction, Wesker awakes from the dead thanks to the prototype virus he injected himself with. He quickly takes whatever samples of the T-virus he can get his hands on and tries to get the combat data. But due to the interference from Sergei, he can't access any of the data in the computer. His access rights were taken, remember? On top of that, his Tyrant was destroyed by stars, making it impossible for him to get the data from the source. Angry and frustrated, Wesker leaves the facility before it can explode. With that, the mansion explodes just as the surviving members of STARS leave by helicopter. Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, Rebecca Chambers, and Brad Vickers all make it out alive. All the members are admitted to the local Raccoon City hospital and then are returned to active duty. Wesker secretly joins the third organization despite not having the combat data. Due to failing to accomplish his first mission within the organization, he enters with a tarnished reputation. During this time, Umbrella's many factions work on improving all of their biological weapons with the data acquired by Sergei from the mansion incident. Due to the increase in experimentation and studies, Wesker sees this as an opportunity and plans to steal the G-Virus data being conducted by William Birkin in an attempt to redeem his reputation. Chris begins to try and convince Brian Irons, one of the heads of the RPD, to investigate Umbrella for everything they did to the mansion. But since Brian Irons has been accepting bribes from one of Umbrella's top scientists, William Birkin, he ignores the request to look into the situation. Chris decides to take matters into his own hands at this point and takes a long vacation in which he intends to look into Umbrella himself. Umbrella's experiments continue and the G-Virus nears completion at this time. As it gets closer, Chris gets all the information he needs and he informs Jill and Barry. They decide that they're all going to go to the European facility that Umbrella owns and finalize all their information to put that final nail in Umbrella's coffin. Chris heads directly there while Barry relocates his family to Canada before following. But just before she can go, Jill decides to remain in Raccoon City just a little bit longer to see what else she can find. Back with our researchers, William Birkin has finally completed his research of the G-Virus, but he's beginning to disagree with the Umbrella executives as to its application and plans to sell it to the US government. With that, he requested an extraction from his research facility by the US military. But Umbrella got wind of Birkin's betrayal, and they sent their own team in to recover the samples before the US military could. That Umbrella Special Operations team was led by Hunk, a ruthless and silent operative of Umbrella. Sadly for Birkin, Hunk's team got to him before the military could, and they shot Birkin with a submachine gun and took all of his samples. With that, Hunk's team fled back to the sewers. Birkin wasn't done yet though. He took one of the remaining G-viruses and injected himself in the arm, and with that, he transforms into the massive monster simply known as G. He chases after Hunk's team, and after being caught off guard, the Birkin G-monster manages to kill everyone except for Hunk and Miguel. But the situation gets even worse. The virus vials fall and break into the sewers, infecting the water and the local rats. On September 24th, 1998, the Pentagon declares that Raccoon City has been contaminated with radioactive waste, and they send the US Army in to begin to blockade the town. A riot then breaks out during a football game between the Raccoon City Sharks and the Old Court Thunders. Half of the spectators became zombies, and due to the confusion, the infected individuals began to spread the disease throughout the town. With the town now contained by the army and under martial law, the poor citizens of Raccoon City are about to become the latest cover-up from the government. Back in Jay's bar, a zombie breaks in and attacks one of the employees named Will. This causes 8 individuals within the bar to venture outside and see the rapidly declining state of the city, and they all decide to flee the city together. The game Resident Evil Outbreak chronicles these 8 individuals as they attempt to escape the city, find a cure, and one of them tries to steal the weapons of Umbrella. A few days later, Umbrella, realizing that they have a few loose ends to wrap up, well, a few loose ends beyond the fact that they've now infected the entire town of Raccoon City with zombies. They launched the Nemesis T-type weapon BOW to fight the members of STARS, acquiring more combat data and ultimately killing them off. Shortly after the Nemesis begins its search for the STARS members, Jill Valentine, who decided to stay in Raccoon City to find evidence, has now decided that the whole city has become a lost cause. Without any hope in sight of Raccoon City being saved, she decides to flee while she can. The events detailing Jill Valentine's escape and the Nemesis killing the members of STARS are chronicled in the Resident Evil 3 game. Brad Vickers, the pilot who ran for his life at the start of Resident Evil 1 and then came back to save everyone in the end, starts off by getting murdered by the Nemesis. The virus that he becomes infected with, though, is stronger than anything else that they've seen before, and he awakens as a zombie despite lacking his brain. Jill has to deal with this former STARS member, and shortly after runs into the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasures Service. This team consists of Carlos, Mikkel, and Nikolai. It is Nikolai who explains that the rescue helicopter is waiting for the bell in the clock tower to be rung to pick them up, and if the whole crew moves to the clock tower, they can all be saved from this horror. During the journey there, Mikkel sacrifices himself, and Nikolai is presumed dead by everyone involved due to a fight with the Nemesis. Jill and Carlos get separated, leaving only Jill by the time she reaches the clock tower. Upon arrival at the clock tower, Jill manages to ring the clock tower bell, signaling that she needs to be picked up, and the helicopter hears her. But the helicopter pilot is not the only one who heard her. The Nemesis has also heard the bell being rung, and comes straight for Jill. He quickly destroys the helicopter and then attacks Jill. During the attack, though, Jill becomes knocked unconscious, and she's infected with the T-virus. What will happen to her? I guess we'll have to find out next time. But we're not done with this episode yet. Right around the time that Jill falls unconscious, Claire Redfield and Leon Kennedy both arrive in the town through roads that the military has yet to blockade. Claire Redfield is looking for her brother, who she's recently lost contact with. And Leon is a new recruit for the RPD and arrives just in time for his first night of duty. The two of them meet up while running into the creatures that have overrun Raccoon City, and both jump into a nearby police cruiser to try and escape. But during the confusion, Leon crashes the cruiser and the two of them get separated. Now, a wall of flame separates the two of them, and against their better judgment, they need to separate and agree to meet back up at the police headquarters. At this time, Resident Evil 2 takes place, but we'll have to continue that story next time. So right now, we're in the middle of two games, Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. So what's going on, so you're not totally lost? Let's just recap a couple of important bits. Chris and Barry Burton have headed off to Europe to find out more about Umbrella. Wesker is looking for a way to steal the G-virus so that he can redeem himself to the Third Organization. Jill is currently trying to escape Raccoon City, but has become infected with the T-virus and is now unconscious in the clock tower floor. And for all you fanboys and fangirls, Claire Redfield and Leon Kennedy have just arrived in Raccoon City and are about to begin their first adventure. The US government is also currently trying to cover up this whole mess by declaring it a radioactive disaster. And lastly, Umbrella is currently trying to cover up their tracks by killing all of the survivors and recover their data, while under the direction of Spencer. Don't forget to check out our other complete stories involving Metal Gear, Zelda, Kingdom Hearts, and Bioshock. We also do improv comedy acting out characters, so make sure you check out those series like Skyrim and Mass Effect. Lastly, why don't you go check out our Let's Play bonus channel? It's on that second channel that we sometimes promote, sometimes talk about. Here's the link to it. We just finished the Borderlands DLC, and we're working on the Metal Gear Solid 3 DLC and some Dynasty Warriors videos. Also, follow us on Twitter, Facebook for up-to-the-minute updates, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you all next time.